Hey everyone. Quite often we hear reports about people talking about the barley in Israel being Abib, so we can all start our new year. But we should be asking, do we actually need barley in Israel to determine the start of our year? Please hear me out on this and see what you think. Shalom everybody, and welcome to Beit Tefillah. It is thought that when the barley is Abib in Israel at the next new moon, that it is the first of the year for us, for all of us. But is it? I want to say something here. I would assume that most people watching this are trying their best to walk in obedience. I would imagine most watching here are tired of all the misinformation out there and they just really want to worship Elohim in spirit and truth like we're told. This is going to be a very in-depth study. I ask you to take any preconceived notions that you may have and kind of set them over here for now, set them aside so you can hear what I'm trying to say here. Don't let that be in your mind as you're trying to hear what I'm going to present. You're going to hear some logic on this issue that you most likely have not heard before, and it's good that we examine all things that we do and hold them up to the Word and make sure they match. We already know that most of what modern religion does and teaches is wrong, be it Christianity or Judaism. So if we claim to have actually have left Babylon, but we're still doing what some do in religion of some kind, we should question that instead of following blindly without asking questions. And we don't all have to agree. That's okay. If you watch this video and if you don't agree, that's just fine. We have a lot of friends that disagree on many of these calendar issues, but we're all trying our best. We are told to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, and that's what we're trying to do. We will not be all of one mind until the Mashiach comes back and puts us as such. So let's continue with this, and please hear me out. And if nothing else, it will help you think about what you do and why. That's all I'm trying to say is just hear me out, okay? First of all, to begin, let's see what Yahuwah gave us for signs. Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for appointed times, for days and for years." Now, as far as barley goes, it's reported that the barley examined in Israel called wild barley is an ancient variety. The harvested barley would be domesticated barley and not wild, as the wild barley is not desirable for making bread, and the yield is pretty low from what I've been told. However, has the domesticated barley that they plant and harvest today in Israel ever been modified in any way that would alter its speed of maturity one way or the other? Much of it has been. Since we have wild barley and 6 other barley species in Israel, which barley species would be used to calculate the month of Abib if you were going to do it that way? And how would you calculate it? Let's check that out. A. First of all, what type of barley is being used out of all 6 or 7? Which type are you using? B. Was it planted at a certain time for growth to be established around the estimated time of Abib? If you get it in the ground too late, if you're getting it in the ground too early, then you might mess up your calendar. See how man could mess with it in just that one point? Even if it was altered or GMO, and if it was like an early harvested type of barley, then it would come up and be Abib even earlier. And C. Exactly what stage of its development is it being used for a witness to test for Abib? There are 55 different stages in the growth cycle of barley, from germination to what they call a hard kernel harvest. There are 17 different stages referred to as an out-of-the-boot stage that could be argued to be Abib by different people. For example, here are 8 of those stages. Number 1, a head on the edge of the field just out of the boot. Number 2, 80% of a field just out of the boot. Number 3, a head on the edge of the field well out of the boot with no seeds in the pods. Number 4, 80% of a field well out of the boot with no seeds in the pods. Number 5, a head on the edge of the field with no seeds in the pods but no yellowing of the plant. Number 6, 80% of a field with seeds in the pods but no yellowing of the plant. Number 7, a head on the edge of the field with seeds in the pods and yellowing of the plant. Number 8, 80% of a field with seeds in the pods and yellowing of the plant. That's only 8 of them out of 17. All 8 in that group are used by different groups in their calculation of the first month, known as Abib. Keep in mind that different types of barley, even if they are planted at the exact same time, can mature almost a month apart from each other. However, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Yahuwah told us when to start the first of the year by the barley being Abib when you see it in Israel. Really? Well, let's look. Exodus 12, 1-2. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses and to Aharon in the land of Egypt, saying, this month is the beginning of the months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Now we see, Yahuwah told them that while they were still in Egypt when the first of the year would be. So the new year had nothing to do with barley in Israel. Not when he said that. Check. Now the following scripture is also given to support using the barley to set the first month of the year, because this is one of the plagues that happened shortly before the Exodus when they were going to be leaving the land, okay? Exodus 9, 29-31. And Moses said to him, as soon as I go out of the city, let me spread out my hands to Yahuwah, let the thunder cease and the hail be no more, so that you know that the earth belongs to Yahuwah. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear before Yahuwah Elohim. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the head, and the flax was in the bud. Okay, let's recognize this hailstorm happened in Egypt. The barley grew in Egypt in Egyptian weather. So if this determines the first month of the year, shouldn't they go by the barley in Egypt each year? Let me ask you something. We know the geese fly south for the winter. Would we say that the geese flying south makes the winter start? No, that would be a silly question, right? If I make a statement and say, I go to sleep at night when the crickets start to sing, and if a cold front comes through and it makes the crickets be silent, am I not going to fall asleep that night? No, I'm giving you a time of when that happens, right? So when Yahuwah tells us when the barley is Abib, that will be the first month of the year to you, why do we assume that the barley being Abib would start the spring? That's also silly. You can know the seasons by what happens during them. Yahuwah was telling them that the first month would be during the time that the barley was Abib. How it should be understood would be, you will see a witness that the beginning of spring is here, as the barley will be Abib. As in, you know the season of fall is here, because that's when the geese fly south for the winter. So, if not the barley, then what do we use to set our first month of the year in the spring? Genesis 1:14, once again. Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and for years. I don't see barley anywhere in that sentence. Genesis 1:14 is all we need to know for our calendar. All of our signs, seasons, moedim, days, and years can be found in the heavens or in the Mazzaroth, the story in the heavens that Elohim gave us. Let's say you were stranded on a deserted island in the middle of nowhere for years. Do you think that Elohim would give you absolutely no way to find out the times of his seasons to calculate his moedims being there? Of course he would. But people in the world today have been taught to ignore all the things in the heavens that Elohim gave us and that he told us about in Genesis 1:14. Let's read something real quick of what we were told in the Tanakh by the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 29:10. For Yahuwah has poured on you the spirit of deep sleep, and he has closed your eyes, the prophets, and he has covered your heads, the seers. That word for seers there is Strong's H2374 Kozeh, which means stargazers. Elohim had closed the eyes and covered the heads of the prophets and the stargazers. Now we know that Elohim told Daniel that things would be sealed up until the time of the end. So now we expect that we're near the time of the end, so wouldn't we think that things would be unsealed or revealed to us? So what would we do if we were stranded on that proverbial island? Or what could we do at our homes wherever we live today, wherever we have been scattered? What if we use the equinox to determine the first month of the year? Now stick with me, okay, because I'm just referring to Genesis 1:14. Hear me out on this. You may not agree, but that's okay, but just hear me out. Now, this system defines the first month to start with the first new moon after the spring or vernal equinox. For the couple years we've been doing this, it's been lining up almost perfectly with what other people are doing too. Okay, so it's right in there really close. The equinox is the time or date twice each year at which the sun crosses the celestial equator when day and night are of equal length. The spring equinox marks the end of winter and brings the spring season and the warmer weather to the hemisphere that the sun is entering. Would we think that the new year for anybody would start in the winter when things are dying, or would it start in the spring when new life is coming back? That's when everything is Abib, or green, right? In the spring. We use both the sun and the moon to set the beginning of the year, as we use the first new moon after the spring or vernal equinox. Both signs are in the heavens. If you use the barley in the moon, you omit a sign in the heavens. Remember Genesis 1:14, and Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and for years." Now some might argue and say, hey, I don't see equinox anywhere in that sentence. True. But what we are looking at is signs or lights in the expanse of the heavens and not a witness upon the earth. Barley is obviously an earthly witness and not a sign in the heavens. If you're going by Elohim's calendar, the barley will always be Abib in its season as it's presented for first fruits. After all, it's Elohim's schedule. Twice per year we have exact and perfect separations between day and night. The spring is the vernal equinox and the second is the autumnal or the fall equinox. The barley would be Abib only during one of those. And this is why Yahuwah said that will be the start of the year for you at that time when the barley is Abib. Now besides equinox, it should probably be called equilux. Lux for lighting and nox is night. So it's not really equal night. It should be equal light between night and darkness. Twice per year, once in the spring, once in the fall. In the spring, he said, that will be the beginning of the year for you. There are many different methods that people use to reckon the new year, and all but this one needs tweaking by man to keep the set-apart appointed times of Yahuwah in their correct seasons. Without a system of regulation, like man-made Adar Beit, for example, the Moedim would simply fall out of season. We know of no other system of checks and balances within Scripture. The equinox fits the bill quite nice. It was set up by the Creator, it is out of reach of man's corruption, and when used with the new crescent moon sighted after the spring equinox with the Abib barley as another but not needed witness, this keeps the Moedim in line and the correct timing beginning with the first day of the year. The Messiah said in Matthew 24:32, "And learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know the summer is near." So the fig tree's leaves are a witness that the summer is near. The same idea with the Abib barley, it tells us the relative season. We don't set our summer by the fig tree. The Abib barley seems to be the witness given due to the sun, but it's the sun's work to Abib the barley, but not a sign of the sun itself. It is a witness from the earth, which is not listed amongst the things which give us our signs and seasons in Genesis 1:14, the sun and the moon and the stars, or the luminaries in the heavens. Here in North America, when it's our springtime, which also coincidentally happens to be the same for Israel, it is fall in Australia. In the countries or continents that are in the southern hemisphere, it's fall for them too. If they were to set their season of spring or start their year by Israel's barley, how would that work for them? If they said, hey, it's the springtime now, it's time to plant, and then they get a freeze in the wintertime in the southern hemisphere and all that stuff freezes, that's not going to work out very well for them. They're just going to go ahead and plant their crops and let them freeze? Since Egypt or Mitzrayim is a metaphor for the world, maybe it should be said that anywhere you are in the world when the barley is Abib, that will be the first month of the year for you. Do we start our Sabbath day when the sun sets where we live, or when it sets in Israel? Where we live, right? Wherever we live. Why would it be any different for the start of our year? Yahuwah gave us signs to see wherever we have been scattered, even if it's on a deserted island. Deuteronomy 30, 1-2. And it shall be, when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the Gentiles where Yahuwah your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim and obey his voice according to all that I command you today, with all your heart and with all your being, you and your children, then Yahuwah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the people where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. So how long have we been in the dispersion now? It's about 772 BCE when they were scattered by a Neo-Assyrian Empire, roughly 2,739 years ago. How would those people know who had been scattered far off from the land of Israel have known when the barley was ripe in Israel? How would they? By messenger or mail, the message would have arrived way too late and they would have missed Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, to say the very least. Okay? Something had to be developed that was quicker. Something had to be provided for Elohim's people that they could see around the world at the same time. The first transcontinental phone call occurred in 1915, which was 102 years ago. Are we to assume that Yahuwah's people could not have possibly kept his Moedim at the correct times for over 2,600 years until the telephone was invented? That's ludicrous. If only the Creator would have placed some giant lights in the sky for us to know the keeping of the Moedim wherever we've been scattered. Once again, Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years. We need to stop assuming of that's how it's done in Israel, that it makes it correct for all of us wherever we have been scattered. They keep their Sabbath when the sun goes down in Israel. They start their year when it's spring in Israel. You can't go by the same springtime in the southern hemisphere. You keep your Sabbath when the sun goes down where you live. We are given the signs wherever we have been scattered. We are in the dispersion. We need to discern the signs in the heavens and govern ourselves according to Elohim's word by his signs as they bear witness to us in our land. And we don't need to grow barley here for that. Let's also look at another example. If the people were off on a journey in a land at the time of the Passover, they were told to keep it. Numbers 9, 10 to 11. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, when any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Passover of Yahuwah. On the 14th day of the second month, between the evenings, they perform it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They eat it. They are told to keep it a month later, but in order to do this accurately, they would still need to know when the correct time was a month prior. Doesn't seem like a big deal, does it? There's just one problem. If a man is on a journey far away, tell me how is this man going to know when the barley is Abib in Israel? If it was 2,500 years ago, he could not. So he would have done what everyone else did, use the new moon after the spring equinox, and he would have been right on time. Some may use this argument. It should be noted that the equinox is never mentioned in the entire Hebrew Bible. Genesis 1:14, which has been cited as proof of the equinox theory, does not mention the equinox either. Okay, fair enough. Let me say this in reply. The wise men found the Messiah as a child using the Mazaroth, using the signs given in the heavens. This is why they were called wise men, because they knew this even when King Herod, didn't know, his men didn't know, okay? They found and recognized the Messiah and went to worship him by the signs Yahuwah put in the heavens. They didn't just pick a star. They waited and they knew somehow that this star would show up. And that's what they said. We saw the star from back in the east where we were, okay? There are no instructions in the Hebrew Bible for this, yet somehow they came out of Babylon and found the Messiah using the signs in the heavens. That's a pretty big clue. Of course, Hasatan tries to taint everything that belongs to the Creator. Hasatan has got everyone to thinking that if you follow the signs in the heavens that you're into astrology and that's all wicked and stuff, and that you're pagan. Well, we follow the sun every day to start and end our days. It's sunset Friday, we start our Sabbath. It's over on sunset Saturday. We watch for the new moons to blow our shofars. We start Yom Teruah on the new moon, the first day of the 7th month, right? This is all according to Yahuwah's instruction that we follow, and it's not pagan. Of course, some people live their lives according to the stars and follow that evil called astrology, just like modern religion follows Hasatan disguised as a lawless Messiah. There is corruption everywhere. We have to learn to discern, be set apart, and come out of this chaos called Babylon. Let me ask you this. What would happen if there was a very strange weather in Israel? It was, the barley's planted in the fall, and it comes up in the spring. What if there was a freak accident and a late freeze came in and killed all the barley right when it came up out of the ground, and it wouldn't be Abib at all in the spring? It was all dead. What would they do? Just not start the year? You see what I mean? No. The barley is a witness. The signs in the heavens cannot be corrupted. Hasatan can't mess with those. The only thing he can do is to get people to try to ignore those signs that we've been given by changing times and laws or inventing something like a Hillel calendar, which has people looking at other things to keep us from observing Yahuwah's perfectly scheduled Moedim and at their correct times. For the keeping of the new year, the feast days, all of the Moedim that Yahuwah commanded us to keep, we do not need anything to guide us in the physical land of Israel or any witnesses in that land to keep any of the Moedim where we have been scattered. Please understand that. Numbers 35:34, and do not defile the land which you inhabit, in the midst of which I dwell, for I, Yahuwah, am dwelling in the midst of the children of Israel. Children of Israel is in the descendants of Jacob, who was renamed Israel. The new moon begins the new month according to Yahuwah's calendar. The Gregorian calendar runs apart from that, but it is written that they will think to change times and laws in Daniel 7:25, which they certainly did. They made changes as well with the creation of the Hillel calendar, but that's for another video. And this is why those of us who have returned to the ancient way have returned to looking towards the heavens for the signs that Elohim placed there for us as our markers. Because once again, Yahuwah told us, Genesis 1:14, Elohim said, let the lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and for years. This is what Wikipedia has to say about month. A month is a unit of time used with calendars which is approximately as long as a natural period related to the motion of the moon. Month and moon are cognates. In linguistics, cognates are words that have the common etymological origin. Okay? The traditional concept arose with a cycle of moon phases such as months or lunations, which are synodic months and have approximately 29.53 days. From excavated tally sticks, researchers have deduced that people counted days in relation to the moon's phases as early as the Paleolithic age. Synodic months based on moon's orbital period with respect to the sun-earth line are still the basis of many calendars today that are used to divide the year. Here's Elohim's commandment for Yom Teruah, Leviticus 23:24. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the seventh moon, or month, on the first day of the moon, month, you have a rest, a remembrance, a blowing of trumpets, a set-apart gathering. How do we know when to start the seventh month and to blow our shofars? By the moon, right? We blow our shofars when we see the new moon on the seventh month. So, of course, we would start our year by starting on the first new moon of the first month. We need to get past what most people would say next, which would be something to the effect of, well, of course we start on the new moon. It's after the barley is Abib in Israel. Let's clarify something. The barley is a witness, not a sign. What do we as Yahuwah's people do when we see the new moon on the seventh month, like we just talked about? We blow our shofars and we become witnesses of it. The blowing of our shofars doesn't start the seventh month any more than the barley starts the first month. The shofar blowing and the barley, both witnesses. So for the sake of this video, I thought I'd add a couple more witnesses. We never really use extra biblical sources here at Beit Tefillah, but I'm going to use two of them from antiquity today as two more witnesses. Philo, who lived in the 1st century, was a highly educated Jew from Alexandria, Egypt. He wrote about the timing of the Feast of Elohim and the seasons in which they were observed. Here's an excerpt from the Special Laws 2, the 5th Festival, page 582, from the works of Philo, complete and unabridged, by C.D. Young, the translator. The vernal equinox is an imitation and representation of that beginning in accordance with which this world was created. Accordingly, every year God reminds men of the creation of this world, and with this view puts forward the spring in which season all plants flourish and bloom. Josephus, the Jewish historian, wrote that Passover must be observed in the spring. Sure, we can all agree on that. Here's an excerpt from Antiquities, Book 3, Chapter 10, Part 5. In the month of Xanthicus, which is called by us Nisan, and is the beginning of our year, on the 14th day of the lunar month, when the sun is in Aries, for it is in this month that we were delivered from bondage under the Egyptians, the law ordained that we should every year slay that sacrifice which I before told you we slew when we came out of Egypt, and which was called the Passover. And doing so, we celebrate the Passover in companies, leaving nothing of what we sacrifice till the day following. The Feast of Unleavened Bread succeeds that of Passover and falls on the 15th day of the month and continues 7 days, wherein they feed on unleavened bread. But the second day of unleavened bread, which is the 16th day of the month, they first partake of the fruits of the earth, for before that day they do not touch them. And just a note about Josephus' writings about this, Aries was the constellation which began at the vernal spring equinox and continued for 30 days. Thereby the Passover per Josephus could not have come before the spring equinox. Now, this is also a very important part. I'm just going to touch on this briefly, not go in depth on it, but in having a discussion recently with somebody on Facebook, they mentioned something that I also need to share in this video because it's a great point. The spring equinox date we are given of March 20th is actually for the equinox at the equator. Since the Earth tilts up in the spring, if you live in North America, it would put the date of the equinox where you live a few days earlier than that March 20th date, which is for the equator. So you should figure that date out from when that equinox occurs for where you live, okay? We don't have to worry about it this year as the new moon is more than a week later after that 20th date, so we don't have to worry about it. But what if that new moon would fall on the 19th instead? So we're really somewhere guessing like around the 17th for where the equinox would be in North America. And at the equator, it's on the 20th. So everyone else is saying, yeah, we go by the 20th, but that's not where the sign is where you live. And if the first new moon would fall like a couple days after, where it would be for us. If we waited for the next new moon after that 20th date, we'd be putting all the Moedim and the first of our year off by a whole extra month. We'd be on the wrong schedule. So let's recap real quick. Yahuwah's people are now scattered across the entire world. He would not make it necessary to rely on information coming from the physical land of Israel for all of us to know when to start his new year. He would give us the signs in the heavens and the sky to see wherever we are so that we could keep all of his days at the right time. We don't start our Sabbath when the sun sets in Israel, nor do we start our new month when the new moon is sighted in Israel, although some people do in error. So why would the Abib barley in Israel be assigned to us who can't see it? He only gives signs that all of his people everywhere can see, wherever we have been scattered. No emails, phone calls, man-made calendars, or Facebook posts from Israel should be needed for us to know his appointed times. All of this modern technology hasn't been around for very long, and Elohim has always had ways for those people who are his in the dispersion to follow his appointed times wherever they live around the world. You can't ask for anything better than lights in the sky, just as he told us in Genesis 1:14. Yahuwah's word speaks about the Abib barley so people will not mistake the new year as beginning at the other equinox or autumnal as in the doctrinal error which many hold who start their year in the fall. Like when we celebrate Yom Teruah, some others will celebrate Rosh Hashanah or simply say Happy New Year in the fall. That's not right. You can only say Happy New Year once a year. In the spring will be the first month of the year to you. The springtime, the Abib, is my favorite time of the year. It's such an explosion of life, of colors and sounds and smells of all the blossoms coming out on the trees and all the new green grass coming up and all the birds that are coming back and flocking and they're laying their eggs and birds are hatching and new animals are being born. And it's such a huge renewal and refreshing of life in the spring when everything comes Abib. It's such a beautiful time of the year to see all that, all this new life coming back. There's just so much joy in that, and I love to take pictures of that. And as I've done in another video or two, I also like to make montages of that. So I made one for this video at the very end, so please watch that coming up here in a few seconds. And everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for all your shares and your likes, and please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. And thanks for being a part of Beit Tefillah Productions. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful Abib. Now watch this montage.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.